It sounded like a scene ripped straight out of a movie, but it was all too real. In the heart of America, a black billionaire, dressed simply and without fanfare, walked into one of his own luxury hotels. Moments later, he was humiliated and thrown out by a receptionist who had no idea who he was. What happened next would not only shatter her career but leave the entire hotel staff stunned. This is the story of how one man's quiet power turned a moment of disrespect into a lesson no one would ever forget. The receptionist barely looked up from her computer. With a forced smile and a dismissive tone, she said, "This entrance is for guests only, sir. Please leave before I call security." He paused. There was no anger in his eyes, just a calm, calculated stillness. "I am a guest," he said quietly. She scoffed. "Right? And I'm Beyoncé. Sir, I asked you to leave." Minutes later, security arrived. 2 guards escorted him out through the lobby, in full view of the other guests. Some stared, others whispered, but no one intervened. Outside, he pulled out his phone, not to call a lawyer, not to call the press. He called the regional manager. And within hours, everything began to change. By the next morning, the receptionist's keycard didn't work. Her login credentials were gone. Her name vanished from the schedule. Confused and furious, she marched to the front desk, only to find a new manager standing there, one she had never seen before. The new manager simply said, "Mr. Johnson would like to see you upstairs." Her hands trembled. The name rang a bell. Mr. Isaiah Johnson. The name she had ignored when he politely introduced himself the day before. The billionaire owner of the entire hotel chain. She was about to come face to face with the man she humiliated. And he wasn't angry. He was patient, which was much, much worse. The elevator ride felt like forever. She stared at her reflection in the mirrored walls, adjusting her blouse, wiping invisible sweat from her forehead. Her confidence from yesterday had vanished. All that remained was a dull ache of panic building in her chest. What if he fires me? What if this goes on my record? I didn't know who he was. The elevator chimed. Top floor. The doors slid open to reveal a quiet hallway lined with framed photos, all of them featuring Mr. Johnson, cutting ribbons at grand openings, shaking hands with celebrities, smiling with world leaders. He wasn't just rich, he was known. At the end of the hallway, a pair of large oak doors stood open. Inside, a spacious office bathed in morning light. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline. Mr. Johnson stood by the window, his back turned. She stepped in, unsure whether to knock or speak. "I remember you," he said without turning around. Her throat tightened. "Sir, I didn't know who you were. I thought you were someone who didn't belong." He finished for her, finally turning to face her. His tone was calm, measured, not loud, not cruel. But it cut deeper than any shout. She lowered her eyes. "I didn't mean to offend you." He walked to the desk, picked up a file and held it out. "Do you know what this is?" She stepped forward slowly, hands shaking as she took it. Her name was on the cover. Inside, every shift report she'd filed, customer complaints, security footage, even her social media posts. Some with not-so-subtle comments about sketchy guests. He sat down and gestured to the chair across from him. "I built this company from nothing," he said, "and I have people who watch everything, not because I'm paranoid, but because I care about what I've built. About the people who walk through these doors. People like me, who were once judged by how they looked." She opened her mouth, but words failed. "I'm not here to scream," he said. "I'm here to make a decision. One that could change your life." Silence. He leaned back in his chair, eyes steady on hers. "And I haven't made it yet." She sat frozen in the chair, the folder still open in her lap. The words, "I haven't made it yet," echoed in her ears. Finally, she found her voice. "Please, give me a chance to explain." Mr. Johnson didn't blink. "Explain what?" I judged you. I admit it. And that was wrong. But I didn't mean it to be personal. I've dealt with some rough situations, and sometimes I jump to conclusions." Her voice cracked. "That's not an excuse. I didn't know." He studied her, eyes unreadable. "And if you had known? I, I would have treated you with more respect." He leaned forward slowly. "So you think people only deserve respect if they're rich?" Her lips parted, but she didn't answer. She couldn't, because the truth stung. Mr. Johnson stood and walked to the window again, hands behind his back. I used to clean hotel bathrooms," he said quietly. "Worked double shifts. Took the bus for 2 hours to get here. No one ever saw me. They just saw a uniform." He turned slightly, just enough for her to see the edge of his expression. Not anger. Disappointment. "I built this place so people like me, like us, would never have to feel invisible again." She lowered her gaze, the silence pressing down on her like gravity. Then he said something that made her breath catch. "I'm not going to fire you." She looked up, eyes wide. "But you're not staying here either." He walked to the desk, pulled out another folder, this one thinner, and handed it to her. "What's this?" she whispered. "A transfer. New location. Different city. New team." Her fingers trembled as she flipped it open. "Wait. This is corporate. Atlanta. Assistant to the regional training director?" He nodded. "You'll shadow someone for 6 months. If you last, maybe you'll understand what it takes to lead." She blinked. "But why? Why give me this?" He held her gaze for a long moment, then finally said, "Because destroying someone is easy, but rebuilding them, that takes real power." She stared at the folder, speechless. "Why me?" she finally whispered. Mr. Johnson smiled faintly, but not out of amusement. "Because I've been where you are. I know what it's like to be young, scared, trying to look strong while hiding your mistakes. You messed up, but that's not the whole story." He walked toward the door, opened it, and turned back to her. "You have two choices. Take the transfer, learn, grow, or walk away and carry this moment as your legacy." She stood up slowly, folder pressed to her chest. Her voice wavered. "I'll take it." He gave a simple nod. "Then prove to me that I was right to believe in more than punishment." 6 months later, Atlanta. The hotel lobby buzzed with quiet efficiency. A new trainee stood awkwardly behind the check-in desk, clearly nervous. A guest approached, dressed simply, no suitcase, no fancy watch. The trainee hesitated. The woman beside him, no longer in her old receptionist uniform, now wearing a sleek blazer with a gold name badge, gently stepped in. "Good morning, sir," she said with a warm, steady voice. "Welcome. How can we help you today?" The man smiled and handed over an envelope. "Just dropping this off." She glanced inside. A handwritten note. "I heard you made it. I never doubted you. IJ." Her breath caught. The trainee asked, Was that someone important? She folded the letter carefully. Yes, she said. But more than that, he was someone who gave me a second chance. She turned back to the trainee with a soft smile. Let's get back to work. Every guest matters.